Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a struggle that is absolutely universal, a battle we all seem to fight every single day, managing our time. I mean, we've got more apps, more books, more systems than ever before, right? All promising to make us these masters of our own schedules. And yet, for so many of us, it just feels like we're constantly falling behind. And that brings us to the central paradox, the big question. With this endless arsenal of tools at our fingertips, why do we still feel like we're losing the war against the clock? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is way more complex than just finding a better to-do list. So to solve this mystery, here's our roadmap. We're going to explore that time paradox by digging into the messy truth of the research. Then we'll see why it's not just you. Uncover the unseen rules that govern us. Look at how your brain is actually wired for time, and finally, land on a whole new way to think about this. Okay, so what does the science actually say about time management? You would think there'd be a pretty clear answer, but honestly, the research is a total mess, just full of mixed findings and contradictions. For decades, the assumption was super simple. Manage your time better, you'll feel better, and you'll perform better. But when researchers actually crunched the numbers from all the studies, the picture got incredibly murky. The connection to our well-being, it's inconsistent. And the link to actual job performance, it's even more contradictory than that. Just take a look at how much these numbers are all over the place. In one study, time management shows a really strong link to having a sense of purpose. But then in others, it has a weak, maybe moderate link to job satisfaction. This kind of inconsistency is a huge clue that there is no simple formula here. Something else is definitely going on. And okay, when it comes to performance, this is where things get really weird. Time management seems to have zero effect on objective things like sales numbers or what your boss thinks of you. And get this, in one study, it actually had a negative effect. It made performance worse. So what gives? So if the data is a mess, maybe the problem isn't the techniques at all. Maybe, just maybe, the problem is that we're ignoring the actual person who's using them. So let's zoom out a bit and look at our own individual psychology. Let's start with a key concept, and it's a bit of a mouthful: polychronicity. It sounds super complex, but it's actually simple. It's just, do you prefer juggling a bunch of tasks at once? Or do you really need to focus on one thing at a time to get it done? So a person with a monochronic preference, they thrive on structure, on planning. For them, interruptions are maddening. But a polychronic person, they're the total opposite. They love multitasking. They roll with the punches. A rigid, single-tasking system isn't just unhelpful for them, it's actively stressful. And this right here is a perfect example of why a one-size-fits-all approach is just doomed to fail. And it doesn't stop there. Think about your own work-life boundaries. Segmenters need that hard stop between their professional life and their personal life. You know, the 9 to 5 is like a fortress wall. But integrators, they're totally comfortable blending the two, answering emails while they're making dinner. A system that demands that rigid separation, it's going to drive an integrator absolutely crazy. And maybe the most important psychological difference of all is something called temporal awareness. This is the deep-seated belief that time is a finite thing, a resource that needs to be budgeted, just like you would budget your money. Some people naturally see their day as a 24-hour bank account to be spent or saved or wasted. But for others, time is way more fluid. If you don't fundamentally see time as a resource to be managed in the first place, no amount of scheduling is ever going to stick. Okay, so we've looked inside our own heads. Now let's zoom out even further to the powerful, invisible forces in our environment that are dictating our time, whether we realize it or not. See, every workplace operates on two sets of rules about time. Time structures are the obvious ones: your 9 to 5 workday, the deadline for that big report. But time norms, those are the unwritten rules, the shared expectations about how fast you have to reply to an email, or that pressure to be seen online late at night. These norms, they're intangible, but they often have way more power over our behavior. And you can see these norms playing out at every level. Your team has unspoken rules about how quickly you're supposed to respond to things. Your company might have a FaceTime culture where just staying late is valued more than actually being productive. Even something as simple as what's considered on time for a meeting can vary wildly from country to country. And all these norms create this powerful social pressure that can totally undermine your personal time management efforts. This is the core conflict in action. There was a study of software engineers that found that management directly linked performance rankings to the number of hours an engineer was physically seen at their desk. Now, in a culture like that, being a hyper-efficient time manager who gets their work done in 7 hours instead of 10, That doesn't get you a promotion. It gets you a reputation for being uncommitted. You're actually punished for being efficient.
So we've looked at ourselves and we've looked at our environment. Now for the final piece of the puzzle, let's zoom all the way back inside our own heads and look at the cognitive biases that can just sabotage our best laid plans.
We've all heard of the sunk cost fallacy with money, right? Refusing to abandon a bad investment because you've already put so much cash into it. Well, the exact same thing happens with our time. It's called the temporal sunk cost effect. It's that meeting you stay in even though it stopped being productive an hour ago, just because of the time you've already put in. But here's the truly shocking paradox the research uncovered. A lot of time management teaches you to treat your time like it's money, but doing that actually makes you more likely to fall for this bias. When you're super aware of the time you've spent, you become even more reluctant to cut your losses, and that causes you to throw even more good time after bad. It's wild. And this brings up another critical question that really cuts to the heart of our modern anxiety about time. What happens when we take that advice literally and we start putting an economic value, a price tag, on every single hour of our day? You'd think that valuing your time more would make you feel more in control, right? But the research shows the complete opposite. The more you think about your time in terms of dollars and cents, the more time poor and rushed you feel. Every moment that's not spent on some profitable activity feels like a loss, which ironically creates the very stress that time management was supposed to get rid of. So, if the old tools are flawed, and our brains and our workplaces are kind of working against us, what's the solution? Well, the answer isn't a new app or a different planner. It's a completely new framework for thinking about time itself. And this brings us to a new framework. See, true time mastery isn't about one single tool. It's about looking at the problem through 3 different lenses: your own psychological style, the sociological rules of your environment, and the sneaky cognitive traps your own brain sets for you. This is a fundamental shift in how we look at this. Real control isn't about finding a new tool. It's about developing a deeper awareness of yourself, of your environment, and of your own decisions. It's about diagnosing the problem before you try to write a prescription. So we'll leave you with this. Take a moment to look at your own life through this 3-part framework. Think about your personal style, the invisible rules that are all around you, and the mental traps you tend to fall into. What's the one surprising thing you now see differently about your own time?